Good evening, I'm Jim Lara. On the NewsHour this Monday, the lead story, the still growing backlash against the bonuses of insurance giant AIG, as seen by two key members of Congress. Then the other news of the day, with the latest on the protests in Pakistan, a report from Margaret Warner on U.S. troops in Afghanistan, and a media unit look at the disappearance of America's major newspapers.
Major funding for the NewsHour with Jim Lehrer is provided by...
The world is changing, and how we use energy today cannot be how we use it tomorrow. There is no one solution. It's not simply more oil, more renewables, or being more efficient. It's all of it. Our way of life depends on developing all forms of energy, and to use less of it. It's time to put our differences aside. Will you be part of the solution? Chevron, human energy.
Grant Thornton.
The William and Flora Hewlett Foundation, working to solve social and environmental problems at home and around the world.
And with the ongoing support of these institutions and foundations. And
this program was made possible by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting and by contributions to your PBS station from viewers like you. Thank you.
The anger over insurance giant AIG dominated the public discourse in Washington and elsewhere today. President Obama and members of Congress attacked new bonuses paid by the company after it received federal help to stay in business. Ray Suarez has our lead story report.
the president led the wave of condemnation over the way AIG is spending $170 billion in taxpayer money.
This is a corporation that finds itself in financial distress due to recklessness and greed. Under these circumstances, it's hard to understand how derivative traders at AIG warranted any bonuses, much less $165 million in extra pay. I mean, how do they justify this outrage to the taxpayers who are keeping the company afloat?
The storm erupted Saturday when the company disclosed $165 million in bonuses paid out yesterday. That figure is part of a larger payout, valued at $450 million in bonuses and other incentives. Much of the money went to a unit that lost $40 billion last year, insuring securities tied to high-risk mortgages. AIG's new CEO, Edward Liddy, said he finds it distasteful, but the bonuses were legally promised before the company accepted funds from the Federal Reserve. But President Obama said the real issue is about fundamental values.
All across the country, there are people who are working hard and meeting their responsibilities every single day without the benefit of government bailouts or multi-million-dollar bonuses. They are, in some cases, mortgaging their homes and doing a whole host of things just in order to keep things afloat. All they ask is that everyone, from Main Street to Wall Street to Washington, play by the same rules.
In Albany, New York State Attorney General Andrew Cuomo said he hopes to enforce those rules by issuing subpoenas about the bonuses. AIG also reported using $90 billion in federal aid to reimburse U.S. and European banks for mortgage losses and other transactions. Of that, nearly $13 billion went to Goldman Sachs, and $12 billion went to cities and towns under investment agreements with the company. In Congress today, lawmakers on both sides of the aisle vented their frustration. Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid.
These executive bonuses are beyond even outrageous. I don't know what a term is that is more definitive than outrageous, but outrageous does the trick.
Republican Jeff Sessions also lambasted AIG, but he said the government shared the blame.
If your government, our government, had acted properly, we would have allowed this company to go forward in a controlled, orderly process through reorganization under Chapter 11 and we wouldn't have this bonus embarrassment.
The rescue of AIG last September was the first and is so far the biggest by the federal government, but the company has continued to post massive losses, more than $60 billion in the fourth quarter alone. And AIG has become the focus of the growing public anger over financial rescues in general. That's reflected in a new poll by Andrew Kohut of the Pew Research Center for the People in the Press in Washington.
As much as 48% of the public saying they are angry about the government bailing out companies because of their own poor performance.
So has this sentiment about the financial crisis begun to accumulate in a way that's affecting the way the public feels about President Obama?
Even though Obama's ratings are still high, although a little bit less high than they were a month ago, the public ultimately is frustrated by many aspects of the financial rescue and trying to deal with these economic problems, and the president will begin to pay some price for that.
The president made clear today he'll try to make AIG pay a price. He said he's asked Treasury Secretary Geithner to use every legal avenue to block the bonuses.
And to Judy Woodruff.
The letter from AIG that sparked all the outrage was blunt. That was where new chief executive Edward Liddy spelled out to Treasury officials why he believed the bonuses must be paid. He wrote, quote, "Quite frankly, AIG's hands are tied. Outside counsel has advised that these are legal, binding obligations of AIG, and there are serious legal as well as business consequences for not paying. Retaining key traders and risk managers is critical to our goal of repayment. Having contractual commitments is at the heart of what we do in the insurance business." The question now, can the government find a way legally to prevent those bonus payments? We get reaction from both sides of the aisle on Capitol Hill. Representative Barney Frank is the chairman of the House Financial Services Committee and a Democrat. And Representative Scott Garrett is a Republican from New Jersey, who also sits on the Financial Services Committee. And for the record, we invited Edward Liddy of AIG to appear as well, but he declined our request. Gentlemen, thank you both for being with us. And Chairman Frank, to you first. Mr. Liddy in that letter said, among other things, he said the company was legally bound to pay these obligations to their employees. How do you see it? Do you think they were legally bound or not?
Oh, Judy, I'm trying to get over my surprise that he didn't accept your invitation, so I may be a little flustered. But the answer is I don't know, and we're going to look into this. We have been aware, obviously, of this problem. The Committee on Financial Services has had a hearing scheduled with Mr. Liddy as a witness for some time. It's going to be Wednesday morning on our Committee on Capital Markets. Mr. Garrett is the senior Republican, I believe, on that subcommittee, and we're going to be pressing that. The staff that I have and others are now looking at this. And I think one of the things we have to be clear, so there are two possible ways in which the federal government could cancel the bonuses. In the recovery legislation that we passed, my colleague Senator Dodd put some very tough rules in there to prevent this kind of thing from happening in the future. He said anybody who takes this kind of money in the future can't do these things. But that wasn't in there in the past, partly, by the way, because this grant did not come from any congressional vote, or at least not one for 75 years. This came under authority the Federal Reserve had without congressional voting on the asset relief program back in 1932. But people were looking, well, can the federal government, as the regulator, in effect, cancel this? But there's another theory where I think we have more rights. We're the owners of that company, de facto, and probably legally. We have 80% of the equity. So I do believe the federal government, as the owner, can say these bonuses may have been promised for performance, but I think we can look at the performance. As the president was quoted in the show was saying, it's hard to argue that this is paid for performance. And when Mr. Liddy says partly it's legally binding, partly it's to retain people, looking at the records, these do not sound like people I would be that eager to retain.
So you're saying there may be a way out there for the federal government? We have not given up on
looking on that. The federal government has the owner of the company to defend itself.
Representative Garrett, do you think AIG was legally bound here?
It would seem that they would be legally bound, and just going on, I don't think I've ever seen Barney flustered, actually, at anything coming before him, so I don't think this surprises him. And actually, that's, I guess, really the main point here, is that none of this should have surprised any of us. For those of us who were opposed to the Fed getting involved, and they did, for those of us who were opposed to both TARP 2 and TARP 1, we should have we all should have seen that this is coming down the road, that companies have contractual obligations with their employees, and that the federal government, be it through the Fed initially or through TARP after that fact, and those were TARP legislation that were passed by both houses of Congress, by the House and the Senate, with no strings attached, with no caveats saying you can't take it if this situation, then this was really out there for us to understand. And it was actually out there also for Secretary Geithner to understand coming into this as well. The letter that you referenced, I believe, was just today, and in that letter it references a conversation with Secretary Geithner a week ago. So it's only now that it's making headlines that the president is coming back and basically second-guessing his own Treasury Secretary on this. Why Secretary Geithner didn't raise this when he first understood it is beyond me.
So you're saying, go ahead, Congressman.
Well, I just want to disagree with one point. Remember, this was not under TARP, this initial thing. And under the TARP 1, the bill that we passed at the request of the Bush administration in October, I guess, by the time we got to it, we did have some restraints. They weren't as good as they'd like to be because we ran into some resistance in part from people in the Senate who were working with the Secretary of the Treasury, Mr. Paulson, who resisted them. The current TARP legislation, any new money comes with very strict restrictions. But this preceded that. This was money that the Federal Reserve came to us in September and said, we are announcing that we are lending $80 billion to the AIG, and it had nothing to do with Congress now. It is a statute that was passed 70-some-odd years ago that I believe should be changed. It gives them too much power that really hadn't been used for a long time, and that is something we'll ultimately do. Well, but it is we can restrict things going forward, and we have.
Just quickly, though, Congressman Frank, to Representative Garrett's point that this should have been anticipated and maybe even headed off by the administration.
No, not by this administration. First of all, I am struck when I deal with some of my Republican colleagues that the world appeared to have been created on January 20th, 2009. In fact, this was the product of Mr. Paulson, Bush's Secretary of Treasury, Mr. Bernanke, Bush's appointee to the head of the Fed. And I think they tried to do a good job, but let's not put it all on Tim Geithner. Secondly, the Federal Reserve did this. I suppose the Federal Reserve could have conditioned this in September. The argument being made now is, well, but these predated even what the Fed did. That's why I think the legal authority that we should try to use is we now have given that company so much money, mostly the Federal Reserve, without a congressional authorization. We now own the company. And it's as owners of the company, we have greater power to say, you guys did not earn those bonuses, than if the federal government intervened in that relationship.
So let's come back to the bonuses themselves. Congressman Garrett, would you argue that these employees who work in this so-called financial products division should get no bonuses? I mean, how does one decide what their compensation should be?
Well, I presume the president and CEO, Liddy, would argue that it's in their contract as to what their compensation formula would be. It was probably based upon how much they were able, sales that they actually made, not on the end result, which would probably, obviously, I think Barney and I would both agree, it's the wrong way to write a contract as far as compensation. It shouldn't be what you just get up front. It should be whether those contracts actually work out at the end of the day. But that was the term, apparently, and we'll learn more in the committee, that was apparently the terms of the contract that these employees had. Both of us agree also on the fact that if we were writing the contract, we wouldn't have written it that way, and going forward, that we should do something about it going forward. But that's, at this point in time, somewhat water under the bridge.
Judy, can I give you a point of view? Because this is part of the problem. It's what we call the perverse incentive. And that is, in a lot of these bonuses, even at the top level, it's a heads they win, tails they break even. That if at any point in this transaction they make some money, they get a bonus. But if it loses money, they don't get it. I think that's contributed to systemic risk. We will be dealing with that going forward. But I do think as the owner of the company, we can say, you know what, and I haven't seen the contract, I want to look at them, but you were going to get a bonus for this or that performance. I mean, even in those companies, you don't get a bonus for breathing. There has to be some performance. And I think it is possible to argue with the owners that the performance did not, in fact, meet reasonable standards. I don't know that. That's the line we're going to pursue.
Well, let me come back to both of you, and I'll turn to Congressman Garrett for this. One of the other points that Mr. Liddy made in that letter, sure. he said retaining key traders and risk managers is critical to our goal of repaying American taxpayers the money that they deserve, the money the government has given us. In other words, he's saying we can't do business and raise the money that we owe the government back without the best and the brightest.
Well, he's right on that last point. He can't pay the money back without the best and the brightest. The question mark that I think all of us have and all of America has are these people that were AIG before in this particular division, not the rest of it, the insurance company, what have you, but these particular people, are they really the best and the brightest, that they did not see this coming, that they got their company in the red for this amount, and now they got all American taxpayers in the red as well. But I go back to my original point as well. These are things that some of us were saying before, that if you get the government and you get the American taxpayer on the hook initially, well, it's awfully hard to pull ourselves out of the fact. And that's why some of us were saying no to the initial. Some of us were raising the flag as well for the Federal Reserve as well, for all the activities they were doing, questioning their expansive powers and saying that we should be reining them in as well. Unfortunately, it seems the way that Congress works is it's only after the fact that we actually get to hear and have a hearing and get to the point and say, and then do something. Well, we haven't done anything. We haven't done anything about this yet.
We had a hearing in July. We did have a hearing in our committee in July on the Fed's use of these powers after, and one of the things that we should understand is the Fed was motivated here by the negative reaction when they let Lehman Brothers go under completely. They did withhold, and Lehman Brothers went under. A number of people think that allowing Lehman Brothers totally to fail had a lot of negative effects. And then in July, we did have a hearing before members of the committee, Mr. Garrett and others, with the Fed there. Frankly, the questions were kind of milder than I thought that they would be at the time. But the other thing I would say about this, to Mr. Liddy's point, the key point, in fact, I would think there's an argument for not only for not retaining them. People tend to defend their own handiwork. It is a human trait not to want to admit error. So having the argument that the people who made these mistakes, and maybe they were understandable mistakes, maybe other people would have made them. I don't know that. I'm skeptical. But having the people who made the mistakes and the decisions that turn out badly be the ones to undo them isn't necessarily the best course. It is often the case that fresh faces have to come in because they don't have a vested intellectual interest in defending this. And I think the argument for retention is weakened by that it might be better in many cases to start with new people.
And Chairman Frank, on Mr. Garrett, Congressman Garrett's point earlier, essentially that the Treasury Secretary, Tim Geithner, isn't really being tough enough here. Does he have a point?
Well, no, he didn't say that. He said that he shouldn't have been surprised. He said that he knew this on Wednesday. Well, if in fact they were legally binding Wednesday as well as now. Again, I think, excuse me, Scott, please don't interrupt. There's an element of partisanship here. There's an element of partisanship here. These were decisions made when Paulson was the Secretary of Treasury, Bush was the president for months. Blaming Tim Geithner, who's been in power a very short period of time, is really this kind of revision of history that's not helpful.
Let me come back to Congressman Garrett on this larger point here, and that is, would you revisit the decision in the first place for the federal government to bail out, to rescue AIG? I want to make sure we're not confusing the decision about bonuses with the overall decision to give them $160 billion.
Now, I would certainly, if we had the things to do over again, try to revisit. Now, when we revisit, of course, American taxpayers are already on the hook. Remember the idea that when they engage themselves in this activity, the idea was if we don't do certain actions, we would see a calamitous result afterwards. We would see the stock market go from 10 or 12,000 all the way down to 10,000 or 9,000 or 8,000. Well, those things happen anyway. They said if we didn't take some of these actions, the credit market would seize up, and it would seize up for months at a time. Well, that's occurred anyway. They said that the securitization market would seize up as well. That's occurred anyway. So all the doom and gloom that they talked about, starting with Secretary Paulson's comments, arguably during the Bush administration, but carried right through into now with the doom and gloom that continues out there, has continued to occur anyway. The one caveat on it is that the American taxpayer is now on the hook. And so, yes, we have to put the best and brightest back into AIG. Why? Because we put in so many tens of billions of dollars in the American taxpayers that it's basically, you're throwing good money after bad, but they're doing it now because they want to get some of that money back. All these things should be revisited to examine it. And it was President Obama who chose Secretary Geithner to be his Treasury Secretary. And no, it wasn't just last Wednesday that Secretary Geithner should have known about these things. That's when the Liddy letter referenced it. But as Secretary Geithner, he was probably one of the three peoples in the room when Bernanke and Paulson and Geithner sat down and planned these things during the last administration. If he didn't know how executive compensation packages worked, then I have a real question there. And why President Obama is second-guessing him now, I have a question there.
The partisanship, I guess, was best underlined by Mr. Garrett saying with Mr. Paulson arguably during the Bush administration. I didn't know it was open to argument that Secretary Paulson was in the Bush administration or that President Bush was in power till January 20th. It's not arguable. This was a Bush administration initiative. Yes, the Obama administration has inherited it. Yes, we have got some work to do to change it. But as far as being tough, under Secretary Geithner's rule, and because of some of the things we've done, we now have the banks in the TARP program, which is controlled more by Congress, telling us they're going to quit because we're too tough. And I welcome that. I take a lot of pride in that. We changed the law in the recovery bill to make it easier for them to give the TARP money back because under the Bush administration, it was too hard to do that. And yeah, we've had banks saying, oh, you won't let us go to these hotels to the golf tournament. You're telling us to restrict this compensation. We're going to give the money back. I welcome that. Let me repeat right now. We're here. Bring the money, please. We'll be very nice to you when you bring it back.
All right, gentlemen, we could go on, but we are going to leave it there. And I want to thank both of you, Chairman Barney Frank, Congressman Scott Garrett. We appreciate it.
Appreciate the chance. Thanks.
In other news, Wall Street fell short in its bid to rally for a fifth straight day. The Dow Jones Industrial Average ended with a loss of 7 points to close just under 72.17. The Nasdaq fell 27 points to close at 1404. Stocks were up for much of the day. They gave back the gains later, partly because American Express reported more credit card holders are late on their payments. The price of oil headed higher today. It rose back above $47 a barrel in New York as stock market rallies outweighed OPEC's decision not to cut output. The cartel's Secretary General blamed the U.S. and other leading countries for the financial crisis, and he said they need to take stronger action. He said oil nations did nothing to create the problem. President Obama has unveiled a new $15 billion package to help small businesses. It comes from the overall financial rescue package known as TARP. At today's announcement, Treasury Secretary Geithner insisted banks in the program start lending, especially to small businesses.
I want to deliver a clear message to our nation's banks. Across this country, thousands of small businesses are finding it harder to get the credit necessary to stay in business. Credit is essential to economic recovery, and we need our nation's banks to go the extra mile in keeping credit lines in place on reasonable terms for viable businesses.
Under Geithner's orders, 21 of the largest banks taking government money will have to make monthly reports on loans to small businesses. Other banks will have to report on a quarterly basis. The government of Pakistan agreed today to reinstate a fired Supreme Court Chief Justice. The announcement prompted anti-government demonstrators to call off plans for a major march on the Capitol. We have a report from Lindsay Hilsum of Independent Television News.
Before dawn, lawyers gathered in celebration outside the Islamabad house of the former Chief Justice Iftikhar Chowdhury. Former President Musharraf dismissed him when he became a focus of resistance, and it's taken street protests and major political and diplomatic pressure to get the new government to reinstate him.
This is a victory for those Pakistanis who made a commitment to the rule of law. This is a happy message for those who are lucky enough to witness this day, but it will also increase our responsibilities in the weeks to come.
People waited all night for the Prime Minister's TV announcement.
Aziz Hambatno. I announce here, according to the promises made by me and the President of Pakistan, the reinstatement of all deposed judges, including Iftikhar Chowdhury, back to their jobs.
Mr. Chowdhury then appeared on his balcony to greet the jubilant crowds. As Chief Justice, he had threatened to lift the amnesty granted to the current President, Asif Ali Zardari, over corruption charges. Which is probably why President Zardari didn't want him back. But after a meeting with the army chief, it seems that he and the Prime Minister decided they had no choice. It's a triumph for President Zardari's arch-political rival, Nawaz Sharif. He rallied his supporters to the cause of the Chief Justice, vowing to march from Lahore to Islamabad together. Fearing instability and violence, British and American diplomats urged compromise. Mr. Sharif has won this round of a seemingly endless political grudge match, which distracts Pakistan's politicians from the fight against the Taliban. and keeps the country in a constant state of turbulence.
And as the political drama played out, militants in northwest Pakistan staged a pre-dawn attack on a military supply depot. They set fire to vehicles packed with provisions destined for U.S. and NATO forces in Afghanistan. It was the second such attack there in as many days. In Iraq, the U.S. military confirmed it shot down an Iranian drone aircraft over Iraqi territory last month. The statement said American fighter jets fired on the unmanned aircraft 60 miles northeast of Baghdad. It said the drone's path was not an accident. The U.S. has accused Iran of funneling weapons and money to Shiite extremists in Iraq. Also today, an American soldier was fatally injured during combat operations in Baghdad. A pro-reform leader in Iran pulled out of the presidential race today. Former President Mohammad Khatami said he wants to avoid splitting the reform vote in the June election. He said another candidate has a better chance of winning the votes of reformers and conservatives. The newly elected president of El Salvador is promising to unite the country after winning Sunday's election. Former TV anchor Mauricio Funes led a party of former leftist guerrillas. He ended 2 decades of conservative rule. The president-elect celebrated with his supporters in San Salvador early today. He told supporters this is not the time for revenge. This is the time for political understanding. And still to come on the NewsHour tonight, newspapers going under and the war in Afghanistan. 4 more U.S. military personnel were killed there over the weekend. The U.S. military effort is the subject of tonight's report from Margaret Warner. She will be reporting from Afghanistan throughout this week.
From a few thousand feet up, eastern Afghanistan is a knockout. But these fertile valleys and jagged peaks shelter legions of anti-government fighters, and they're proving a thorny challenge to the United States as it tries to turn the tide of a war it thought it had won years ago.
So this is definitely a contested valley, there's no doubt about it. There are, insurgent groups that are in here.
We are flying with Major General Jeffrey Schlosser, a 32-year Army veteran. He's commanding general of the U.S.-run security sector of Afghanistan, known as Regional Command East.
Stand at peace. Hey, look, guys.
Schlosser is on a whirlwind tour of several troop outposts under his command. He says the fight against the Taliban in his region is particularly tough because of its historic hostility to outsiders and its proximity to the near-lawless western regions of Pakistan.
They still retain a safe haven right across the border, and you saw as we flew up here, it's not very far away. And then two, we are really increasing the amount of troops on the ground in RC East, in eastern Afghanistan. And they're getting out amongst areas that where there were insurgents, and they're making them upset, and they're fighting back.
It is not just control of the East that's at stake here, it is the security of the whole country. Attacks are up in several areas. U.S. coalition and Afghan troop deaths soared nationwide last year. The danger was evident at a Korangal Valley outpost that had taken fire just 90 minutes before we arrived. A unit of the Afghan National Army, or ANA, shares this outpost with Viper Company of the U.S. Army's 26th Infantry Regiment, and Afghan soldiers man the exposed observation posts around it. 22-year-old ANA Sergeant Muhammad Ibrahim was on the ridge when his post was shot at, to no effect.
We do not know the exact place the fire came from. Every time they want to shoot, they are shooting from different places.
Viper Company's executive officer, Lieutenant John Rodriguez, senses suspicion, even when his men pay a friendly call on local villages.
There's villages that I've been to that I've only seen a handful of males my age the whole time I've been here. And there's more males out there than what you see. I mean, you see lots of babies everywhere, but no young men, so.
What does that tell you?
That they're hiding in the hills.
Schlosser says Afghanistan cities won't be secure unless remote areas like Korangal are, and that fight is far from over. Even during our flight into Kunar province, Schlosser was getting reports of attacks on outposts right below us.
When they reported it, did they say a small arms fire or 107? 107. 107, sir. Okay. Yeah, that's a small rock.
But you're saying that right up in there are insurgents?
I guarantee you, because yes, I'll just say it that way, yes.
Schlosser is pursuing a classic counterinsurgency strategy. Drive the enemy from an area, stay around to protect the local people, and help them build a sustainable life with everything from roads and bridges to farming assistance.
Well, I say if you get the big stuff out, it'll grow anything.
One unit executing the Hearts and Minds strategy is an Agribusiness Development Team, or ADT, of the Nebraska National Guard. It's based at Bagram Airfield, the major coalition installation in Afghanistan, 90 minutes north of Kabul. We went out with them one morning in Kapisa province on a mission to advise a local community on how to create an agricultural research facility.
Just as simple as just pushing it into the ground with your weight.
Sergeant William Jones, who was taking soil samples, says Afghanistan's farmers lost a generation's worth of know-how over 30 years of war.
They're still farming with the oxens and the plows, so their farming practices are what's behind. They have the ability, the intelligence level of the farmers is extremely high, but what we're trying to do as an agribusiness development team is give them that education that they need to strive and to get bigger.
But no sooner had our convoy returned to Bagram that a suicide attack hit outside the main gate. The next night, 4 rockets were lobbed at Bagram. One hit the detention facility inside. The following morning, Lieutenant Jeremy Button of the 101st Airborne led his platoon to the nearby town of Jabal Sarraj.
Hey, 2-1.
He stopped first to pick up his patrol partner, a local unit of the Afghan National Police, or ANP.
Are they aware about what's been going on around Bagram the last couple of days?
The joint patrol made its way on foot through town, stopping traffic as a precaution. Button's unit conducts up to 3 such patrols a day.
Things seem to be heating up a little bit lately. You let your guard down just a little bit and things start to happen, so that's why we're ramping it up a little bit around here.
While patrols seek out insurgents on the ground, U.S. air patrols also hunt insurgents from the skies. The raids have killed many Taliban, but also civilians among whom the militants live. The UN says more than 2,000 Afghan civilians died last year, a nearly 40% jump. And coalition and Afghan forces accounted for nearly 40% of those. The reports have stirred anger among Afghans. At a bus station in Kabul, where Afghans come to catch rides south, minibus driver Surat Khan voiced his outrage.
One person gives wrong information that there is Taliban without finding out whether it is a true report, and they airstrike and bombard and kill children, women, and others. I will hold American responsible.
They don't respect to our law, they don't respect to our religion, they don't respect to our culture.
Lal Gulal, head of the Afghanistan Human Rights Organization, says the bombing attacks and night raids on homes are turning Afghans against the Americans and their own government.
They killed a lot of and injured a lot of civilians, and that's a big problem for the people and complaint against the coalition forces, especially U.S. forces.
General Schlosser insists every effort is made to minimize civilian deaths.
We go to extraordinary measures to ensure that we don't have civilian casualties. And when they do occur, and sometimes they do occur, we investigate and we take responsibility. And in this area of the world, you pay a salacious payment. And we do all that, I think, better than anyone else.
Just $2,000. That's not human rights, that's not justice, that's not compensation.
The Taliban uses the controversy to great effect, issuing propaganda videos of the aftermath of alleged coalition attacks to recruit insurgent foot soldiers. That was the case for Yasir, a Pakistani arrested in January on charges of planning deadly suicide bombings in Kabul. We were given access to him Saturday at the National Directorate of Security, or NDS, interrogation center. Yasir denies planning suicide bombings, but he readily concedes he came to Kabul to wage jihad against foreign forces.
In Pakistan, the mullahs are encouraging people to go to Afghanistan and do jihad. They're saying they bombed the wedding party and they killed 100 to 200 people. So you consider yourself a Muslim? What kind of a Muslim you are? You should go and fight against them and protect your brothers and sisters.
Many suicide bomb and IED attacks are committed by Pakistanis or Afghans living there, asserts NDS spokesman Saeed Ansari.
There are many madrasas in Pakistan that not only teach Islamic studies, but have trained the terrorists as well. They train them how to use weapons, how to use suicide vests and explosive material.
This boy, Abdullah, was apprehended near Jalalabad recently, wearing a grenade-laden vest. He said he's 11 or 12 years old. His father sent him to a madrasa for schooling, he said, and before long his teachers were training him to join the Taliban. Why did you want to join Mujahideen?
Our teacher was explaining, when you do a suicide bombing, you'll go directly to paradise and you'll have a happy and good life there.
Who did they tell you were going to kill?
They said kill all non-Muslims. You're a mujahid.
Were you ready to die yourself?
They didn't tell me I would be killed.
Abdullah doesn't know what will happen to him now, but he hasn't changed his mind. Do you still want to kill non-Muslims?
Yes, definitely. When I grow up, I will join the Mujahideen and I will kill non-Muslims.
Former Taliban ambassador to Pakistan and Guantanamo prisoner Abdul Salam Zaif predicts this kind of anti-Western sentiment will prove a tough fight for the new U.S. troops.
They are not care about themselves or not care about American. They said when we're killed, we are successful. If we kill American, we are successful. It's no difference for them. Any country.
We asked Zaif how much of Afghanistan the Taliban now controls.
If you go to Kandahar and go by this road, you will see which area is controlled by Taliban.
What will I see?
You will see. If they will not allow you to go there, that means that's out of control of government.
So that means Taliban's in control.
Yeah.
At the other end of that vital highway lies the coalition's regional command south. It will soon see a lot more action. It is here at Kandahar Airfield where most of the new U.S. troops will come to be deployed throughout the south. This is where the Taliban started taking over Afghanistan 13 years ago. Subduing them here now is essential to stopping them this time.
Primary method of operation is to secure the population. So we'll move in initially to these areas where the population is. We also want to ensure we have freedom of movement.
U.S. Army Brigadier General John Nicholson is the deputy commander of RC South, which is headed by a European.
We've had insufficient forces to adequately secure the population in the southern region for some time. Despite the heroic efforts of our allies, they've simply not had enough forces to do it. With the introduction of U.S. forces, we are going to be able to adequately secure the population and then move forward in terms of governance and development.
But this is a huge area. Can 17,000 more troops really enable you to secure the population throughout this area?
But when you look at the American Army, the American Marines that are coming here, most of them have service in Iraq. So we all must learn the culture of Afghanistan, learn the people of Afghanistan, show respect for their culture and religion, and perform in a way that does no harm to the population.
Some Afghans, like Parliament member Roshanak Wardak, argue there's a better way to protect the Afghan population than sending more U.S. fighting forces.
Please spend that money on our own police or our own military persons. If we increase number of our police, our military, even after 5 years, we will not have any need for foreign troops.
That is a vision of the future New York National Guard Colonel Paul Summersall is working on. The West Point graduate is acting chief of a small Kandahar airfield-based unit of soldiers and Marines who train and mentor Afghan Army and police forces in the field. It's dangerous work.
And these men who are represented here on this wall paid the ultimate sacrifice.
32 men from Summersol's 600-member team have been killed in the 11 months he's been here. Yet he calls this the most rewarding job of his career.
You guys inserted like this, right?
At the main coalition ANA training center in Kabul, Afghan soldiers come for a 10-week course in everything from weapons handling and tactics to logistics and literacy. These troops will move back into the field, posted to places like the ANA's 205 Corps next to Kandahar Airfield, commanded by General Sher Mohammad Zezai.
Yes, sir. I don't want to see.
He told us he welcomes the prospect of more U.S. troops in the south.
Yes, absolutely. They are needed. The Taliban bases its shelters and hideouts in this region. So we need the security forces to help us defeat the enemy. We also need more soldiers to help us blocking or sealing the borders.
Colonel Summersol hopes the new U.S. forces will include 1,000 to 1,500 additional U.S. mentors and trainers, and that the international community will fund a larger Afghan army than it does now.
It's not just the capability, but the size of the Army. So I think we still have a ways to go. The Army's progressing well, and they're taking on the responsibility to develop themselves every single day.
Driving back to the base in a beat-up Ford Ranger pickup, Summersol says the Afghan soldiers at their core are a lot like the soldiers and Marines he leads.
The soldiers here are very passionate about protecting their country and serving Afghanistan. We become a brotherhood, especially with the guys that are alongside them fighting.
After years of setbacks and missed opportunities, their common cause is that one day the fight can be left to the Afghans alone.
In her next report, Margaret interviews General David McKiernan, the top U.S. commander in Afghanistan. And finally tonight, all that bad news about newspapers. Jeffrey Brown has our media unit report.
It had been widely expected, and today it became official. After tomorrow, Seattle will become a one-newspaper town when the 146-year-old Post-Intelligencer puts out its last print edition and becomes a much smaller web-only operation. The decision of the parent Hearst Corporation to abandon print for the internet is the first for a large urban newspaper. Just 2 weeks ago, Denver's Rocky Mountain News shut down its presses after close to 150 years of putting out a daily paper.
It's absolutely devastating to think that this is over.
An executive with Scripps, the chain that owned the paper, explained it this way.
The business model and the economy changed, and the Rocky became a victim of that.
Indeed, the list of victims is growing ever longer. In Tucson, the Citizen, Arizona's oldest newspaper, will close this weekend unless its owner, the Gannett Company, can find a buyer. And the San Francisco Chronicle is also fighting for its life. In the last few days, employees have offered concessions to keep the paper in business, and negotiations continue. The Chronicle lost more than $1 million a week last year. Its owner, the Hearst Corporation, has threatened to close the paper unless it can get significant savings. That would leave a major American city without a major daily newspaper.
We're waiting. We don't know what it's going to be, and we don't know, it might be me. It might be the people I sit next to, and it might be the entire paper. So we're all extremely worried.
Across the nation, numerous newsroom cutbacks have been announced and the number of pages slashed. Owners of major papers in Philadelphia, Chicago, and Minneapolis have declared bankruptcy, while other papers, including the Miami Herald and the Chicago Sun-Times, have been put up for sale with no buyers on the horizon. The economic downturn has escalated problems that were already tugging at the industry, such as plunging advertising revenues and escalating debt. And consumers continue to turn more and more to free news content online. According to a recent Pew survey, the internet moved ahead of newspapers this year as a leading source for national and international news, coming in second behind television. What do citizens think of all this? In a separate poll conducted by Pew this month, 43% of those polled said that if their local paper were gone, civic life would be damaged, quote, a lot. 31% said some, and 23% said not much or none. And joining me now to look at the state of the industry, Dave Hunke, publisher of the Detroit Free Press and CEO of the Detroit Media Partnership, which manages the business operations of both the Free Press and Detroit newspapers. In 2 weeks, the two papers will stop home delivery on certain days of the week. Lauren Rich Fine, a longtime newspaper industry analyst on Wall Street. She's now director of research at Content Next Media, a private company, and teaches classes on the media business at Kent State University. And Alberto Ibargüen, CEO of John S. and James L. Knight Foundation and former publisher of the Miami Herald and other papers. For the record, the Knight Foundation provides funding to the online NewsHour. Well, Lauren Rich Fine, let me start with you. Seattle today, more to come. Let me just put it bluntly. Are newspapers dying? What are we seeing?
Well, I think they're facing really dire straits right now, and I think some newspapers will fail. I don't think that it had to go this way. I think that newspapers ignored all the warning signs. It was an industry that was built on classified advertising, which has quickly migrated to the internet, and the newspapers sat there and watched it happen.
Dave Hunke in Detroit, how does it feel there, this move you're making to limit delivery to homes? Was it that or close the newspapers?
Well, it's actually far more than that. Our goal is to see that we don't end up on any of the list of markets that you talked about recently. We just simply want to find a different way to retain our talent, our journalism, all of our people. We absolutely believe in the future of the newspaper business, but we're not going to spend so much money on paper, fuel, manufacturing costs. We're not afraid of digital solutions, and I think you're going to find in Detroit, we think there is a different way to go at it, and we think it's going to be a good business.
Alberto Ibargüen, do you believe in the future of newspapers?
I believe in the future of news. News is absolutely essential to functioning a democracy, and I also believe in markets, and I think the markets will figure out a way, whether it's newspapers, that may not be newspapers, but it'll be something that will provide people with the news that we need to function in a democracy.
Well, let me stay with you for a moment, because one of the interesting aspects to the announcement today out of Seattle was that the paper would try to survive as a smaller online operation. Now, can it do that? That's always the question, is to make that kind of attempt. What's the record say? What do you think?
I think the record is so far inconclusive. I don't think we know what the model is going to be. What I think we do know is that it's going to be digital, it's probably going to be mobile, and it is certainly going to be interactive. I think what needs to happen is a great deal of experimentation. Some of it is happening in the industry. So I wish a lot more of it had happened when newspaper companies were making considerable profits only a few years ago, but it didn't. So here we are now. I think organizations like our foundation, like Ford, like MacArthur, Carnegie are all doing experiments, supporting experiments. I think there are an awful lot of online independent news organizations, the Voice of San Diego, Chi-Town Daily News, Gotham Gazette, MinnPost, and I think there are lots of other experiments that are being done attempting to find models that will be economically viable. So far, nothing comes close to the general reach of a newspaper, that ability to blanket a community with the same information that everybody can share and figure out how to go forward together as a community. Nothing yet, but we also haven't had a major city that doesn't have a newspaper, and when that happens, I think the market will figure out how to deliver that information. I think it is that important.
Well, Lauren Rich Fine, you said at the beginning that newspapers missed lots of opportunities along the way. Given that we are where we are, as Mr. Ibargüen just said, what models, what kind of experiments do you see out there? What ways should they be going to try to survive?
Well, one very basic idea, which most newspapers have yet to try, is to go to their core readers that still like them in print and ask how much they're willing to pay to get their paper delivered to their door. Another would be an interim step, rather than going the direction of Seattle, which is a noble experiment that they're trying to focus on what they can do that's proprietary, would be the middle ground, which is some type of a online electronic newspaper as opposed to a website. Why not produce the newspaper online so that I can pull it up, read it page by page in the way that it was meant to be formatted, edited, which is a very valuable function, as was just mentioned. I can find the sections in a very predictable manner, and they can deliver it for free. It would preserve the ad positions, it would preserve the journalists, and it would give us a chance to see if the community would still be willing to support the paper just in an online manner.
Was it a mistake, Lauren, to go to giving away free content online so readily? The industry jumped into that quickly.
I don't really think that it was. There's a tremendous amount of competition online. A number of consumers are indifferent to where they actually get their news, although I like to believe that they can tell the difference between professional journalism and citizen journalism. But I think it had to go free. I think that's the model of the internet. Most media is just ad-supported, and that is still a comfortable place. And if we weren't in a recession right now, we would still be facing these challenges. They just wouldn't be as dire as they are today.
Well, Dave Hunke, why stay in print, I guess, is the question to you folks there. What about, I don't know, there's a lot of people, a lot of organizations, for example, closing Washington bureaus. You still have some. Is that the kind of thing that maybe you could do and concentrate on local news? Are those kinds of things possible?
Oh, I think we did many of those things over the last 5 years. We're frankly tired of the layoffs and the unending cost cutting on the news and content and people side of this business. But you've asked me one question, which is we still believe there is a great market for great, rich, in our case, Pulitzer Prize-winning newspapers. We just think there's a different way to go about the mechanics of producing them and delivering them. But to Lauren's point, the most excitement in Detroit that's developing is we're going to do largely as she just described. There'll be an electronic, digital, replica version of the newspaper that is embedded in every subscription, and it is delivered at 5:30 to every one of our subscribers' email addresses. And I think you will find as well at the end of the month, we have some additional announcements on portable e-readers that are going to make that maybe the story instead of the fact that we've cut out some delivery on certain days.
Well, Alberto Ibargüen, I mean, I know what a lot of people wonder about. You talked about some of the experiments you're funding. Let's say that a major city, San Francisco seems to be one of the possibilities, is left without a major daily. Are there alternatives in terms of filling the gap for news gathering? That's what a lot of people wonder about.
I think there are going to be alternatives. There may not be in a particular city, although I think in San Francisco there's a Center for Investigative Reporting that already is beginning to pick up on issues of investigative journalism, something like ProPublica is doing nationally, and others at Boston College. There's another experiment that is also looking at investigative journalism done out of a university setting. I think all of these are the beginning of what eventually will take hold. I don't know, though, how all of this is going to get paid. I think Lauren's right that the model of the internet has certainly been free news, but I don't know that that's necessarily going to be the case. She talks about going back to readers and saying, how much will you actually pay for the information that you valued before? I think we're really going to know when there's no print alternative, how much people really value. And do you then price it on subscription? Do you price it on interaction, micropayments like Walter Isaacson suggested in the cover of Time magazine a couple of weeks ago? I think all of these things are yet to be determined.
Well, Lauren, Rich Fine, I mentioned that Pew study, for example. Do we know much about how people feel about the prospects of losing their hometown paper altogether?
Well, I think the real problem is everybody knows what they're supposed to say in answer to that question, and it sounds like some people were honest and said they didn't care, but most people like to think of themselves as a newspaper reader. I'm not optimistic that readers will pay very much for the paper, but if they're given the choice of no paper, online website, or print paper, they might be willing to pay more for the print paper. But what I'm still trying to figure out is why newspapers haven't done a better job of selling local advertising online. Most of the advertising that they do get online is still national in nature or classified. They've yet to really penetrate their own market. They could be the ones to develop the local ad network. They could create microsites for small businesses. There's still some economic opportunities that they could pursue.
Okay, I'm afraid we have to leave it there. Lauren, Rich Fine, Alberto Ibargüen, and Dave Hunke, thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And again, the major developments of this day: President Obama and members of Congress attacked new bonuses paid at insurance giant AIG. The president called it an outrage and said the government will try to block the bonuses. A reminder, you can find us online at our new one-stop address, newshour.pbs.org. There tonight, a chart showing which banks got how much of that AIG bailout money. Photographs and reporters' notebooks from Margaret Warner's Afghanistan trip, and some background on El Salvador's election yesterday, where the left-wing opposition ousted the conservatives and won the presidency. The NewsHour is available whenever you want it at newshour.pbs.org. And we'll see you there online and again here tomorrow evening. I'm Jim Lara. Thank you and good night.
Major funding for the NewsHour with Jim Lehrer is provided by
oil, energy, the environment. Where are the answers? This isn't a liberal or conservative issue. It's a human issue. As an energy company, Chevron has a great responsibility. So we've improved our own energy efficiency 27% since 1992. And now we ask you to join us in one of the most important efforts of our time. Using less. Will you join us? Chevron, human energy.
Grant Thornton. The Atlantic Philanthropies. And with the ongoing support of these institutions and foundations. And
this program was made possible by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting and by contributions to your PBS station from viewers like you. Thank you.
Stein Oil, an independent franchise of Pacific Network,
a faster and more advanced broadband network than any other in the world. In 2009, we plan to invest billions of dollars into infrastructure, and we're bringing home over 5,000 American jobs, with 3,000 home already. If what we do stimulates the economy, that's critical. But if it stimulates an even stronger future for all of us, even better. We're AT&T, your world delivered.
At McCord's Vancouver Toyota, our customers say it best.
It was an easy choice because I looked around a lot of different places, and what I found is I wanted some unique things on my pickup. They were the ones that could satisfy that, get it for me, and did a great job. I would recommend McCord's to anyone that's looking for a new or a used car.
McCord's Vancouver Toyota.
Find that car or truck you've been dreaming about at VancouverToyota.com.
It's 7:08 at KXL, and we bring you traffic and weather on the 8th.
On I-84, getting a bit of a break now.
Highs today up to 56 degrees.
Brings you traffic and weather every 10 minutes on the 8th. Your first choice for live local news is News Radio 750 KXL.
U.S. Bank. 5-star service guaranteed.